This is the ATI Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the ATI Podcast. Barrett here, Josh riding co-host seat with me, as usual. And we've got our very special guest for this week in the guest spotlight segment, and that's Jackie Kelly. How are you doing, Jackie?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
It is our pleasure, 100%.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Jackie's a part of the special ladies, I would say, that we're featuring this month on Women's Month on the ATI Podcast. And Jackie is in a different field that we've dabbled in here from time to time, and that's the film industry. And she's an actress from the St. Louis area. I said she was a native St. Louis in the bio, but she had corrected me. That's not 100% true, but I told her we adopted her. So
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So, Jackie, so you're originally from the Chicago area, right?
I am. I'm from a suburb of Chicago called Sleepy Hollow, Illinois. It's about 40 minutes away from the city.
Oh,
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
actually one of my favorite movies from youth, Tim Burton
Really?
films. So, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like actually one of my absolute favorites. It's like in my top 10.
Yeah, Tim Burton's a guy that it's hard not to like some of his catalog for sure.
That one it's different. That's why I
Yeah.
like it. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's cool.
absolutely.
That's cool. You can say you're from Sleepy Hollow and,
Right.
do some
It's
horror
not
acting.
as exciting as it sounds, but yeah, it
Sure.
looks good on paper.
Right.
Well, it kind of, I don't know, in a way kind of forecasted your career because a lot of what
Right.
you do in the acting realm is, in the horror or horror
Right.
subgenres, right?
It's actually very uncommon that I do something that's not horror. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, the horror industry in and of itself, of course, there's a lot of interesting players, whether it's the extended film part of the industry or short film. And I know you've had experience in both, and we're going to get into the weeds with that today, specifically in some of your catalog of your work. But where I kind of wanted to start things out today was talking about how we became aware of you and your talents. And that was through a couple former guests that we had on the show, first of which was Logan Cole. He had mentioned some makeup tests and things that he had done for you. And he was also working on some projects that he couldn't totally reveal at the time, but things with people that we've had on the show, like a Doug Wicker or a Mondo Franco. And therefore they also brought up your name whenever we had them on the show too. And we're like, oh man, you got to get Jackie Kelly on your show. And I didn't put it in the connection together because I'd watched some of Mondo's films in preparation for my conversation with him. And, the fact that you had worked with him on quite a couple
Bunch of
occasions
stuff, yeah.
plus, right?
mhm.
So yeah, I was thoroughly impressed once I made the connection as to who you were, and then I knew I saw the makeup test and everything. I was like, oh yeah, she is a great actress, for
Well,
sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think your acting definitely stood out in Mondo's shorts that we watched, like X Massacre and Death Scene, and I was like, I know it's you in both films, but the presentation's a little bit different too. And I think that kind of helps, even though it's all horror, it shows kind of
Right.
your range as an actress too.
I also
So-
look very different in both films. So,
That's fair.
yes,
Yeah,
I
that's
look
fair.
very different in both
That's a part of
films.
being an actress though, right?
Yeah.
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did kind of the acting path start for you, Jackie? Like, where did you kind of get the inkling that like, I might want to try this, or you're interested in it, or is there any moment in time you can kind of say this is where it started?
Well, I first started acting when I was about 12 years old. From middle school all the way throughout high school, I was very active in community theater, school theater. I dabbled in musical theater. There was a very, very brief point of my childhood that I wanted to be on Broadway until I learned that I cannot dance worth shit. So I quickly shoved that aside.
Kind of a necessity, right?
Yeah, it's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
But I got really into horror movies when I was in high school, just watching them, and I decided that I wanted to go to film school. And so I went to school at Webster University in St. Louis, and I got a degree in screenwriting, and I'd like completely put the acting thing on the back burner. Like I didn't want to be an actor. And then I did a couple plays in college and a couple short films. And I think that's kind of when it came back for me, and that it was something that I really enjoyed that I'd kind of shoved aside. And then my senior year at Webster, which was like 2015, I met my now husband, Eric Stanzi, who's a local filmmaker, and we met up and we had similar taste buds, and we co-wrote a feature film together called In Memory Of. And I ended up starring in it. And then ever since then, I've just been acting pretty consistently. And it's been a wild ride.
Very cool. Now, when you were in school and you mentioned earlier that you had started in a few plays and short films, was that the acting part you were mentioning where you kind of started picking back up the acting?
Yeah. I was studying to be a screenwriter, but I was acting in friends' films, and there was a one-act play festival that Webster put. I don't know if they still do it, but they did when I was there. And it was all student-written plays, and I acted in a few of those.
So is your first work, because sometimes IMDb isn't always like 100% accurate on things, but is the first short film you were in, was that The Dressed? Or were you in something prior to that?
I might have shot Amenity before that, which I think maybe came out later, but Amenity might have been the first film that I ever acted in. And that was a short film that me and my older brother made together.
Oh, okay.
He works in Chicago as a cinematographer now.
Oh, cool.
He shot it, and
Very
we
nice.
kind of co-directed it, and I wrote it. And that might have been the first thing I actually acted in, like, on camera.
Sure. I'm sure
it's
that was probably
good, but that was the first one.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people in retrospect, especially as you get more seasoned as an artist, you look back on your earlier works and you don't consider it your best work, but maybe from an outsider's point of view, they would have enjoyed it still yet or had an appreciation for it.
Kind of like our original rendition of the show. We kind of go back and listen to it. It's from 2010 when we were like
20.
Yeah, young
21.
People. Yeah, and just like some of the stuff we said.
Yeah.
It's kind of cringy.
Yeah. It's a little cringe.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you got to move on with life.
Right.
So that being your first acting experience, the collaboration that you had with your brother, how much different was it for you? Was there a wake-up call moving from, working with your brother? I'm sure it was a little bit more comfortable into your next piece of work.
Well, the films that I did when I was in college, they were all they were friends that were directing, film school friends. And so that level of comfort was still there. Honestly, the first big project I ever did was In Memory Of. And, I had known Eric because I co-wrote the film with him, and we wrote it with another local writer / director / actor person named Jason Christ. But other than the two of them, I didn't really know anyone else working on the film, and their company goes back several decades. And so I was kind of like the newcomer coming into the situation. But it was great.
Yeah, I've heard Eric's name quite a few times too in discussions. I believe Andy brought him up, and he was kind of mentioning some local filmmakers specifically that people needed to pay attention to whenever we had a live conversation.
Eric's a local legend.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah, very cool. And whatever you guys, I know that, and eventually we're going to get to it, that you guys continue to work together this day, correct? I mean, obviously he's your husband and you guys have some things in the works, and hoping to get into the weeds about some of that, but I don't want to jump the shark too hard here. And I know that in looking in your background as well, there's several opportunities that you've had in acting that people did recognize your work and that you received some awards at film festivals and things of that ilk, Indie Film Fest awards, International Independent Film Awards, varying awards that you've received over time. whenever you got your first award, was that kind of whenever you felt like you kind of made it, or people were like recognizing your work? I mean, certainly anytime you get an award, you feel like you did a good job more times than not, I would say. But just tell me kind of what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's value in receiving awards. I mean, it absolutely feels good to have someone recognize your work and give you a pat on the back. At the end of the day, that's not why I make movies, you know.
Sure.
I've gained so much more just from being on so many sets over the years and meeting so many incredible artists. And, you know, I say it all the time that all of my favorite humans in the entire world are people that I've met making movies. And at the end of the day, yeah, that's the reason that I do it, is just because I love the people that I've crossed paths with.
Yeah. Well, it makes your job a lot more easy as well. I mean, it's clearly a dream for you on some level, but it makes it that kind of extra rewarding, or kind of sweetens the deal, I guess.
You're chasing what you love and you're immersing yourself in that culture, you know what I mean? And you're doing it for a living too, so that's even better, you know?
And as acting does, it's given you many opportunities, I'm sure, to travel, whether it's, you know, within the nation, the continental United States, or internationally, or things like that. What are maybe some of the more cool experiences you've had as a result of acting, you know, traveling around, would you say?
Well, I think probably the coolest place I've gotten to travel to is last year I worked on a film in Alaska, which was really cool. A really small town called Whittier, where there's literally a tunnel that goes through a mountain. It takes like 7 minutes to drive through it. There's one way into the town unless you come in like through ship into the bay. And the tunnel closes at 9 or 9:30 p.m. So if you're not in the town by then, you just can't get in. It's incredibly remote, surrounded by mountains. That was really cool. I play a super small character, and I was primarily the script supervisor on that film, but it's definitely one of my favorite filmmaking experiences I've ever had.
Wow. That's incredible.
I've never got to experience Alaska, but I've always heard the country is absolutely beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I had an uncle that lived in Anchorage for the longest time. We had an open invitation to go up there, and I never capitalized on it.
Oh, you should have. Yeah, we were like an hour outside of Anchorage.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, I mean, all of Alaska has its beautiful landscapes. There's a little bit of a variety, but you know, as you get more north, of course, it's a little bit more ice capped or whatever the case is. But whenever you were out there, was it kind of during that season of like the darker months, or was it kind of during the brighter period?
It was in mid-April through mid-May.
Okay.
So it was kind of
on the tail end.
But it was really weird because it didn't stay light like constantly. But the sun, even at 11:30 p.m., it was still light outside. I mean, it wasn't like full sun, but it was bizarre. Sure. It was kind of hard to sleep.
I was going to ask if it was.
I wouldn't be able to acclimate very well to that. I'd be like,
I don't think I could either. I don't know.
Honestly, though, like film shoots are like the days are so long and it's such hard, and it's an independent film. And when you're working in independent film, unless you're acting, you're generally wearing several hats. You're doing the jobs of 5 different people. And so you're so exhausted by the end of the day that, you know, the first few days, the light was an adjustment. But after that, it was like, we're just exhausted.
Back into normal mode and order of operations.
Right.
Is there any point, you know, during, we'll say like your fandom or whatever, was there any performance that you gravitated towards and said like, I want to be that, or I aspire to be that, or anything of that ilk?
I don't think I understand what you mean.
Okay. So like, I'll just use an experience for me as a musician. So like one of the first times that I saw footage of John Bonham playing drums, I said, I need to do that. That's what I need to do. So
like favorite performances?
Yeah, maybe perhaps, you know, favorite performances that were kind of an inspiration for you to say, you know, like I aspire to be what they are or to have that talent.
The performances that come to mind that I would love to channel more than anything else are you familiar with a Polish film called Possession?
Yes.
Isabelle Adjani in Possession is that's probably my favorite role I've ever. It's my favorite performance of all time.
Very cool.
Just because she's fucking crazy and she's such a risk taker. And to me, that's the essence of like great performance comes from not giving a shit. And she did not give a shit. You know, as soon as you have any sort of apprehension about looking or feeling or sounding stupid, the performance is shot. And I think she is the queen of not giving a shit. And if I could aspire to be even a quarter as good as any performer in the world, would be her.
Sure. Yeah, I know, like, there's a couple adjacent experiences I could use again for my examples, but I never, I did some plays and things and never got involved, nowhere near to anything that you are, but always been a fan of film. And there's been times that I've seen some acting performances that I've said, man, I wish I could do that,
Yeah, it's incredible.
And, that's the great thing about film is it kind of inspires you in varying degrees, whether it's a fictional character or a nonfiction character or whatever the case is. I think you can kind of draw something from a lot of different performances in films.
Absolutely. And it's weird because even though I predominantly act, I mean, I wear other hats from time to time on movies, but I find myself more inspired by writers and directors than I do by actors. Okay. Acting's just the thing that I excel at the most. Yeah. Of all of the different jobs I could be doing on a film.
I'm sure you can probably relate to this, but like, being a fan of film and everything, I'm sure that there's certain actors that you feel that's kind of appointment watching whenever they're starring in a film or whatever the case is. Yeah. And there's probably directors like that. And then there's probably writers, so I know, like, definitely whenever my fandom kicked up to another level was in my college years, and people would be like, oh, have you heard of this director or that director? And I would just get on a binge of watching John Waters or watching David Lynch or watching David Cronenberg or,
all the greats,
things like that. Yeah. And
my two favorite Davids.
Yeah. Everybody's two favorite Davids, right?
Are there any other Davids?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just, there's that part of it's rewarding as well. There's just so much discovery that you can do with film, and somebody like yourself also wearing different hats throughout your filmography too. I'm sure that you can kind of look at things from different perspectives, like back to your script experiences and things. Like somebody that I look at for script writing, like, I mean, they often do their own films, but somebody like the Coen brothers, but I'll use a better example. Somebody who just finally started directing their own films, that'd be like Charlie Kaufman. Mm-hmm. He wrote a lot of excellent films before he finally started directing his own films, and kind of made almost a seamless transition because his writing stood out so much that you knew it was a Charlie
You
Kaufman
always know
piece.
When you're watching a Charlie Kaufman film, and I love Charlie Kaufman so much because I think he's one of the most distinct voices in modern cinema. I think he's brilliant. But you're right. Like his films that he had just written before he started directing, I mean, they were amazing. But when he did like Synecdoche, New York, I mean, I think personally that's his masterpiece. But
it's hard for me to go back and watch that because of Philip Seymour Hoffman, because I was such a Philip Seymour Hoffman fan, and that was kind of toward
sad one too.
Yeah, it's very well. Most of his films are.
It's Charlie Kaufman. Yeah, it's always bleak, right?
Yeah,
the bleaker the better.
And what was crazy was actually too is like kind of like stretching, I guess, his muscle was whenever he did was it Anomalisa, the animated film, and I really enjoyed that too. But that's super depressing too. It's like some of those films like are the best films, but I just can only watch them one time, and I can go back to it because it's hard to get back in that. I'm a guy that like struggles with like depression and anxiety, so it's kind of I like to see movies that speak to me in that way and understands that mode, but also
you don't always want to live there.
I cannot live there. Too long. Yeah, for sure. Because then I kind of get sucked back into the black hole for sure. But that's definitely a movie that had struck a chord with me when I watched it one time, and I could just run off a punch list of movies similar to that. Like Blue Valentine is one of the.
I've actually never seen Blue Valentine.
Oh my God!
I can't believe I've never seen it.
I can never watch it again. I can tell you that.
I hear that it's incredibly bleak. Yeah.
And it kind of fucks up your perceptions of relationships, like intimate relationships, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I should get around to watching it. I know that I've been recommended that film so many times over the years.
Yeah, I think it's a dark horse banger. Like, I don't think enough people talk about it, quite frankly. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good one. So, but yeah, not to get too much on the side tangent, back on Miss Jackie here, of course. And one thing I really noticed with your performances, and I mean, it's easy to throw the name Scream Queen around here. Whenever you're talking horror, it's kind of an easy moniker to throw on somebody, but I really do feel like that you command a presence on the screen when you're on the screen. You convey a confidence in your acting that, again, I think it makes you worthy of that type of moniker specifically. And, I know I enjoyed your performances, again, specifically in X Massacre and Death Scene. And I know that there's plenty of other work out there for folks to see of yours. And to which we've also, for anybody that's listening and hasn't caught anything of Jackie's, we got a IMDb link out there so you can catch her catalog and go and check out some of her films. But is there anybody that you would consider kind of a mentor in the field over the years that you've worked, and you've kind of felt like, they've kind of given me the confidence on screen? Or do you drive from these other performances and inspirations that you talked about earlier? Kind of what's the motivation? What do you feel like kind of ascended you to that ability?
I mean, my husband, Eric, he's probably been the most influential force in my cinema life.
Mm-hmm.
He's really been there from the beginning, and we've just worked on so many different things over the years, whether he's directing or he's gripping for someone else's film, or, we've just been on so many projects together, and he's definitely my favorite person to be on set with. And he's incredibly supportive, and he's incredibly talented, and he's definitely helped me gain that confidence. And it's taken me a while. I've been acting for well over half of my life. And I spent the first many years feeling like I was delivering kind of stilted performances because there was this anxiety of like, what if I make a decision that's too big, and it's stupid? And because that's the thing about film, that I feel like people look at film actors like the closer to real life the actor seems, the better. And the longer I do this, the more I think that's bullshit, because it completely eliminates any movie that takes place within the realm of surrealism or just anything that's tonally batshit,
Sure.
And the more I do this, the more I get into just really, like I was talking about Isabella Adjani in Possession. I'm really into large performances in films, and it's something that I didn't have the confidence to do when I first started doing this. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of collaborators that I've worked with multiple times, Eric being one of them, Trevor and Carrie Younger, who are also St. Louis folks who I've done several projects with. They've kind of been there since the beginning and have been very influential on my career. So.
Do you feel like there was kind of any breakout moment where you kind of moved past some of those concerns of being too big in the moment, or whatever the case is?
I did a film that, I forget what year we shot it in. I worked on a film outside of Nashville called Tennessee Gothic.
Yes.
It came out in 2019. And I feel like that's probably the first film that really forced me to step outside of my comfort zone. And I feel like my life as an actor has been really different since I did that. Because it's just so, I don't know if either of you have watched it or a trailer or anything. But
we did watch the trailer.
Okay. Yeah, it's very, it's a very in your face kind of movie. And the character is completely different than anything else I've ever played. And I was really scared to play that character at first, but I don't know. It gave me a lot of confidence that I could do hard things. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, I know you mentioned you started at a young age acting, but as far as actual filmography that people can see, that dates back to 2014, right?
Yeah.
My filmography?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I don't know. The years all blur together, man.
I understand totally. And I feel like
the older you get, the faster it gets. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's like weird like COVID lingering effect too, where I feel like even since that happened, that's kind of fucked up my perception of time and space.
The world does definitely feel really weird since COVID has happened.
Yeah.
It just seems like things were so drastically cut off, and we were also cut off, from one another at one point, and then it just like, I don't know, just slowly, now it's quietly.
3 years later somehow.
Right. Yeah. And then now it's 3 years later.
Do your thing.
Yeah, right. And it still feels weird, which is silly because when in the grand scheme of things, especially in my lifetime, I can say it wasn't really that long of a period of time.
Right.
But yeah, totally affects. But speaking of COVID and those challenges, how did you see that affect you personally? Were you in the middle of projects that got shut down, and how did you bounce back, if at all, with any of the projects?
Well, I wasn't in the middle of a project at that time. When we shot Death Scene with Mondo, we shot that like right before lockdown. So we got that banged out like in the nick of time. But I didn't have anything that I was in the middle of that it really messed up. But I mean, I definitely wasn't on any sets no one was. None of us were able to get onto a set for a very long time. So me and Eric, my husband / collaborator, we made a little something that we haven't released yet, that I cannot speak about too much right now, but just a very lo-fi experimental horror film that we put together. So hopefully the world will see that by the end of the year. It's been a slow process, but I think we made something cool.
Are you guys like doing all the editing and stuff yourselves, or are you guys putting that in other hands?
He's an editor. I don't play around with that stuff.
It's tedious.
You can get into the weeds, for sure.
I don't do any of the technical stuff. It's just my brain doesn't work in that way at all.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you bring that up because people's brains do work differently, and that's the beautiful thing about the movie industry is there's so many jobs out there that people can undertake. Even if you're a fan, you want to feel like you're contributing to the art.
Right.
And, and really, I mean, I know it sounds cliche to say, but, everything that creates the finished product is important. So, even if it is somebody, key grip or whatever the case is, it's all very important to reach the end goal, I should say.
That's what I love about making films is it's definitely the most collaborative medium. And everyone is so important, and I think there's something really humbling about that.
Yeah,
sure.
Whenever someone on set's got a little bit too much ego, a simple reminder of you're not the only one here is, goes a long way. So
yeah, absolutely. And the film industry too, you can go back and think of some of your favorite films. Anybody can, I think. And I think a lot of those are going to be selections that are good collaborative efforts as well. So I think that synergy and the friendliness of what's happening on set and everything, I think that does translate to the screen.
Right.
But I've also seen I've seen the contrast. Supposedly you've heard people find out afterwards people hated each other, but they had the most magical chemistry on screen, which is the most bizarre shit ever.
I wonder how much of that's even true, though.
I don't know, man.
I wonder if some of it's just a publicity stunt. How like a lot of famous actors will start dating each other because they get put on magazine covers.
Well, I
don't believe anything anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's probably a valid concern.
Like Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Like apparently they had such an on-screen connection, great chemistry, but then like off-screen they didn't ever talk or anything.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like they on screen they were.
Just not personal.
Yeah, they were just off screen. They were nothing, but as actors together, they had such.
I know, like this is an easy guy to shit on right now, but I think a lot of the examples I can draw from typically are like involving Bill Murray. I think him and Harold Ramis eventually had a falling out, and they like hated each other, but they were in Ghostbusters together. I think Harold Ramis directed Groundhog Day, right? Yeah, I believe so. And he said that was hell making that movie with Bill Murray.
Really?
Specifically,
I've never heard that.
And there's kind of a lot of stories coming out about Bill Murray nowadays, which is a little unfortunate because I was such a fan. But
right.
But you don't know when you're not in that world too. There's a lot of stuff that you, Jackie, probably put up with on sets or have put up with on sets in the past that wasn't desirable too.
Oh yeah. I mean, not all sets are created equally. That's for damn sure.
Right.
And I would imagine that some of that has been a little bit more challenging sometimes, being a woman in the industry and having chauvinistic dickheads sometimes, thinking that they hold dominion over you.
I haven't had that experience too many times, fortunately. Good. And it's interesting because I've actually never. Let me make sure I'm not making a mistake. But I don't think I've ever been directed by a woman.
Really
interesting.
It's really crazy. But most of the people that I've worked with over the years, I mean, a lot of them are frequent collaborators, and some of them are just one-time collaborators. But I've been lucky to not have to deal with a whole lot of assholes.
That's good.
I find that people that are really into horror, and it's obviously not going to be everyone, but horror fans tend to be really good people. And I wonder if part of it's because, I think as human beings, we all have a lot of pent up rage.
Yes.
I know I do.
Yes, ma'am.
And
absolutely.
As horror artists, we get to safely expel that energy.
Yeah.
No one gets hurt. It's all fake and it's cathartic, right?
Yes.
Yes. I think it's good for people. I'm not saying everyone should make dark art, but I personally think it's good for people. And most of the people I know that make horror films are just the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Just the most generous, kind-hearted people.
Yeah, I think people are kind of. This is my experience, and you could tell it better than I, but I think people specifically that are into certain genres, and I will say horror in this case, are kind of locked into the same frequency. It's kind of like we all march to the same of the beat of the drum, if you will, to use an expression. And, I find myself, even if it's like not, there's all kinds of horror movies, right? And people have their different tastes, but I think that at the end of the day, a lot of people that are just like strictly horror fans have an appreciation for anything that's happening in the world, and I feel like they're a little bit more patient sometimes, and will give things a chance versus maybe some other genres.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I am glad to see that horror is becoming a more widely accepted genre. Yes. But with that comes, I hear this term all the time, and it drives me insane when people are like, oh, I don't really like horror movies, but I like elevated horror. And they're talking about like the A24 stuff. Like A24 is the first production company to ever make, thought-provoking horror. And I just think that's such bullshit.
Yeah, definitely is.
Because I feel like horror has always been, in my opinion, the most thought-provoking genre. And I just think if you have that opinion of horror, then you haven't dug deep enough.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the argument that horror is one of the genres that it's taken the most risk and and push the boundaries of what it is.
100%
versus other genres.
Right. There's so many different ways to tell a horror story. Truly.
And I personally find myself enjoying, again, all types of subgenres of horror. And I'm sure you've had experience working in these various types, but I can do with a good camp horror movie from time to time, know. I mean, I think it's kind 100%. Of a required element in any good horror movie, at least on some level, right? But like ones that really lean into it too, I enjoy personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it all. I don't know. There's people that are like one or the other. Like I only do art house horror or I only do camp horror. And I'm like, why can't we do both? I like both so much. I don't want to give one up.
Yeah. And I like to see it being weaved in and out. Like I think a movie that kind of captured that in more recent memory is like It Follows. I think it has moments of both, and it has an intriguing concept, and the idea that a ghoul or ghost or whatever can follow you sexually transmitted, was kind of a breathtaking new take on, it felt very original. We'll put it that way.
I think it's one of the better horror films in the last decade for sure.
Yeah, I agree as well. Awesome soundtrack too. I always like the 80s vibes. Score, Yep, for sure.
I wanted to ask you because, like, one thing I think about acting is, like, what I would think would be the most difficult is, like, character development. Now, like, whenever you get a character, does somebody, like, tell you, like, kind of what they want and then you develop the character? Or is it more, like...
collaborative?
Yeah, is it more collaborative? Or That's something I've always wanted to ask somebody in acting, and I've never had the opportunity, because I feel like that would be the most difficult thing for me is like character development.
A good director will want to collaborate with me.
I got you.
Most of the directors that I've worked with over the years have been excited to get me on Zoom or get me on the phone and figure out a character. I've worked with a few people that didn't really want to step on my toes with that, which I would have appreciated. I don't know. I think there are some directors that are a little shy of giving actors notes because they don't want to like offend them, because there's this attitude that actors are all egomaniacs and like don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Like I want a director to help me to achieve their vision, because I don't
critique
we don't
make
always
me better.
know. Right. But most of the time it's like if you read a script, there'll be like a brief description and an introduction to your character, but it's normally not more than a small paragraph or two. Right.
Yeah.
And then, you develop it through context clues throughout the rest of the script. But then I'll typically try to get someone on the phone and ask them just like all the questions that seem like really unnecessary,
right?
Yeah,
right.
But they mean something. There's a reason. There's a method to my
madness. Like if you're at the grocery store, are you going to be purchasing like Quaker brand oats or store brand? Right?
Well,
like what is my character?
Am I buying best?
That might be too specific.
But that could be a good question. Is would they buy Quaker oats or would they buy generic brand? Because I feel like those are two different types of people, right? People that buy name brand and people that buy generic. That is a character trait that is worth exploring.
Right.
Yeah, most definitely.
That's why I wanted to ask, because I just feel like that would be the most difficult thing about acting. It's just like trying to figure out who the character is or how to portray this person.
Yeah.
Like, that's the most mind-boggling thing about acting to me.
I mean,
an element can do that and capture that. You know what I mean?
An element of it has to be too, kind of just that relationship building initially too, because I will say this in the art field overall, because I've kind of dabbled in other things other than music, but that is, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive personalities, and I'm not saying that to be like critical.
Well, you're absolutely right.
The creative types are, right. And sometimes you're kind of, your art is your vulnerability. So, a director or a scriptwriter, again, you can speak from the scriptwriting aspect. Whenever you're putting pen to paper, those characters are two-dimensional, and it comes to life whenever you have the actors, the chess pieces on the board, so I think it is important for you to convey at least what your initial vision was. It's not to say it can't change, that you both can't come to an agreement of what that character is and why they would make these decisions in this moment. And therefore that allows you as the actress to tap into that channel of how they would behave in certain scenes, or even just body language around other characters. Let's say you're playing a character that's suffering from spousal abuse or whatever. I know it's kind of an extreme example, but maybe when they're around other parties, for example, you would know that, that seems like a really easy excuse. I'm sorry, but, or example, but you would know that your body language would be kind of like, shy of, interaction with other people and kind of guarded, and maybe, a little bit more submissive, when in the company of the spouse or whatever the case is. But, I just know that, collaboration is, and I'm just kind of elaborating on that point, and getting that direction from a director yields the best results, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's really challenging with film, because I've done both film and theater pretty extensively, and there are definitely the pros and cons to both. One of the pros of theater is you have a ton of rehearsal time.
Yeah.
With film, I don't know how many people realize this, people that don't work in film, but we have little to no rehearsal with actors when we do films. We just kind of jump
table read or something like that.
Sometimes
beforehand.
we don't even have that. Know, sometimes we've never met someone, and then day one we're jumping in and doing this really intense emotional scene with them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's honestly the hardest thing about it, and also it's tradition to not shoot films in order. So I find that day one of every film is always the hardest for me, because you might be starting out shooting the last scene of the movie.
Right.
So you haven't been on the journey with your character yet.
Right.
But you have to figure out how they end up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part of playing a character.
I would
figuring
think so.
out on day one, okay, so I've already been through this much, but I haven't performed it yet.
Right.
So, because you never really know how it's going to go, because you don't have rehearsals, and you can play it out in your head a million times, but until you get on set with the other actors, and that's my favorite thing about acting in film is when I do have my preconceived notions about how a scene's going to go, and then an actor working alongside me, they play it completely different than how I would have played it.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it just, but you can I think you get more natural reactions out of actors when someone like legitimately surprises you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you never really know what's going to happen. It's kind of
cool. Yeah,
that's cool.
That is exciting. And being a fan of film and seeing, like behind the scenes stuff on DVDs, features back in the day or whatever the case was, like, that happens, films get shot out of order, but to actually hear it from somebody, like, talk about it and the difficulty and the challenges that can be with, like, tapping into your character, particularly emotions of that character for certain scenes. Like, I don't know that I really, like, thought about it that hard until our conversation today.
Right. Yeah.
And I would imagine that is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
It is. It's always the hardest part for me, especially when you're literally starting with the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough. Yeah.
And people that, might be watching today that don't understand why these things happen, I would, and you'd be able to explain it better than me, Jackie, but it has a lot to do with, what is the scene calling for as far as a set's concerned? Right. So we might have this place booked at this date, so we have to shoot it on this date, and that's why it's out of sequence. That's
what actors are available on certain dates, and it all comes down to scheduling and locations and everything.
Logistics at the end of the day is what kind of determines that, I think, more times than not in the movie industry.
Right.
And I really, you can throw this in there too, but it's like, does it call for a scene outside in the daytime, or does it call for a nighttime sequence or whatever the case is? Or are we putting some footage in the can for continuity type action to lead from this scene to that scene, or whatever the case is too. But there's just so much that goes into film that I think people don't appreciate.
Oh, absolutely.
Once you have that end product too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there occasions in your script writing experience too, I wanted to ask, that you felt like, once you did put those characters on paper, but you saw them play out as well? Earlier you talked about whenever you're acting on scene with somebody and you're like, oh, I wouldn't have played the character that way. And sometimes good results obviously can come out of that because you get those natural reactions. But what about the script writer's point of view? I'm kind of curious to hear if that instance has happened for you where somebody kind of played a character not necessarily as you envisioned it.
Oh yeah. And most of the time, I don't know. I always think that when I write something and I see someone perform it, they tend to do it better than I would have played it. 'Cause I think a lot of times you're just like really close to your material and you hear it one way.
100%.
You've been writing it that way. You've been revising it that way. You hear
100%.
every intonation that way. And then someone hits you with something that's completely different and that you wouldn't have thought of.
100%.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could just draw that comparison to over with the music industry or figurative artwork or whatever the case is. Like the same thing, like you think you're just doing a shit job and you're focusing in. I always like to use the Brian Wilson example where he's going to go in the studio with the Beach Boys and do 10 million tracks and re-record the same thing over and over, even though it's just a 3-chord change, because he's obsessing over this one thing that only he hears that nobody else will hear.
Right.
In his music. And you can kind of get that way and get caught in your ways as a screenwriter or an actor.
Right. I don't know. Brian Wilson's probably an extenuating circumstance. He was a little disturbed, wasn't he? Yes,
he is an extreme. I'm pretty good for the extreme examples if you haven't noticed already. So that's kind of my character flaw.
I love the Beach Boys, man.
Oh, I do too. Pet Sounds might be a desert album for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, they've got the other stuff. I kind of fall off with the John Stamos Beach Boys personally. Like, it's not really my bag. I mean, I loved it when I was a kid, and I loved Kokomo with the Muppets. I think they did that at one point. Yeah. So that was my bag when I was like 6. But, it was all the rage at the time with Full House and everything else. But yeah, you can't go wrong with the Pet Sounds Beach Boys for sure.
That's awesome.
So bringing up music, I got to ask, are there moments in time, I would say, in your acting career, because, that's one thing I think that always enhances a scene or a performance is music. Or is there times that you've went back in your catalog and you look and you think, man, that really added to the scene? Is there a performance that you can point to of yours where you feel like the music just enhanced the experience?
I think the movie that I've done that has the music that is the most memorable in terms of enhancing actors' performances is probably Tennessee Gothic.
I was going to say the trailer itself.
The music is really distinct in that.
Yeah,
and like some of the characters even have like their own theme when they come in, which is cool. I wish my character had my own theme in that, but I don't.
It definitely was atmospheric, I would say.
For sure.
The trailer even.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites that I've done, and I think that the music really enhances that movie a lot. It's a shame, like music rights are so expensive.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Because you hear songs all the time when you're like, man, I'd love to put this song in a movie, but we're making indie films. You're like, that's our entire budget just to get that song licensed.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah, and that's another challenge people don't think about. They think they see a movie and whenever
you just can throw a song in there that you like.
Yes,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
Yeah, we
it doesn't work that way.
John Williams writing the entire score for movies.
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, that too, for sure. That is something that I've always kind of like dreamcasted. It's like, if I'm ever going to make a movie, I got to have this song for this type of scene, whether it's, let's say it's like a broken heart scene. I got to have this song. Or it's a fight scene. I got to have this song,
Right.
That's always fun to kind of fantasy book in your mind for sure.
I remember before I started making movies, and I was just like writing screenplays in little journals when I was like, 16 or whatever. And I had a list in a journal of all the songs that I wanted to put in movies. And it was like before I realized that like you had to pay for those songs.
Right.
I quickly scrapped that list when I figured that out. I'm like, damn.
That was like when the internet started cracking down on you putting any kind of audio on any of your videos.
Right.
It's like, nope. Somebody owns that. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah. For sure. Speaking of music in movies as well, the sound editing can enhance things as well. And something I wanted to speak on, and I think I alluded to in a previous podcast when I had the fortunate experience of going to the short film showcase that they had up at Arcade and Cinema. And they did show X Massacre there that day. And I caught a viewing of that. And I'd already seen it. I watched it on my computer and shamefully listened to it through the computer speakers. But I had the experience of actually hearing the editing of that film, from the sound editing, that is. And I talked to Mondo afterwards because he was there. And I was like, man, it's incredible, that sound editing for that film. Honestly, I thought it was great already. But, man, it just drove it to another level for me.
Changed it.
It was so intense. And then you guys got the natural acoustics of just that train in the background. And it was a steady beat, almost like a racing heart rate. And he said that the sound editor didn't speed it up or anything. And it just increasingly got faster and faster as the scene progressed along too. The sound that he got from the train.
Like natural.
And I told him, I was like, man, that kind of like sounds like a heartbeat racing. He was like, I honestly didn't even realize it was, because he had never watched it in a surround sound setting either himself. He's like, I had no clue. He said, I had no clue it was that good. He's like, I only listened to it on my computer speakers ever. And he was like, I was kind of getting pumped, So, but yeah, I was just like, man, that's all I talked about for like a week or two. I was like, man, that was one of the best sound edited things I've seen, even, feature films or whatever the case is, especially paired with your acting, right before you get the axe. It was amazing. Amazing.
I think I've only ever heard it on laptop speakers or something.
Oh man, you gotta.
No, have I? I can't remember.
You got to at least get a good pair of headphones or like a surround sound setting.
Horror films too, though. Like they.
Well, that's another.
Well, I'm saying
feather
like
in the cap,
they do some of the most like crazy experimental sound effects and stuff too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I've seen some videos of guys making just like like the dings and dongs in the background of the scene and like using pipes and different stuff. It's so creative. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Definitely.
But
smashing fruit to make nut sounds.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the weirdest things sometimes you don't, it takes to translate that to the screen.
Right.
And I know, like, I forget the very famous sound editor for Hitchcock back in the day. They did a biopic on him in the last decade, I want to say.
I haven't seen that.
It was like, I think it was called Bavarian Sound Studio or something like that was the name of the film.
Oh, I remember when that came out.
he's a fantastic character actor. He did Capote in an independent film. God, I cannot remember his name for the life of me now, but really distinctive looking guy, kind of a smaller guy. I always thought he'd play a perfect penguin, but but yeah, like he's seeing some of that in, I mean, I had seen historical footage, but, just kind of elaborate the weird things. Like, I guess this isn't that weird in retrospect now because you've seen it so much, but like the bendings of saws intentionally to get that kind of weird reverberation at times, and recording that and distorting that audio clip and things like that. But
I'm looking, I can't find his name.
Yeah. The horror genre, once again, it's just been something that has kind of pushed the boundaries and caused for reinvention at times or thinking outside the box.
Right.
I want to get into also, Jackie, more recently, I know that you've been working on a film with your husband, Wake Not the Dead.
That is not with my husband.
Oh, it's not with your husband?
No.
Oh, I'm so
That's
sorry.
Something completely different.
Okay, so you are working on Wake Not the Dead, which is a completely crowdfunded project, though, right?
Not entirely.
Okay.
We've shot more than half of the movie already.
Okay.
We shot it in LA in, what month was that? March, April.
Okay.
So we're gearing up to shoot the remainder of the film, and there is a crowdfunding campaign going on right now to help fund that because making movies is very expensive.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's a completely independent film. I'm so excited about this film, guys. It's like so different than anything I've ever done. I tend to play pretty dramatic roles. If you see a movie that I'm in, there's a good chance I'm going to be crying in it. It's just the kind of thing I normally get cast for. But this film, the director, Matt Stewart, he cast me as something completely different than what I normally play. And my character is silly as fuck, and I'm not used to doing that. So it's been really fun kind of tapping into the more, because it's very much a horror comedy. Which is something that I don't normally do. Tennessee Gothic is really the only other horror comedy I've done. But in that film, I played the more straight-laced character, and everyone around me was kind of goofy.
Yeah, but kind of the garnish.
Right. And in Wake Not the Dead, I'm like just a weirdo, like just a deranged weirdo and a goofball. And I'm so excited about it. It's been really fun for me. And it's like really, really hyper violent. Which is always fun to make,
Yeah.
Everyone's just like covered in blood and prosthetics.
Yeah. In the screen grabs that I saw of it, it did look like a really fun movie, and I know that I'm really excited about it. I know that we had shared it in some of our earlier stories, kind of leading up to the interview about a couple weeks ago.
That.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for doing that.
And we're definitely going to include those in our episode details. Again, the links for that.
That's
for
awesome.
Folks. So if you guys are watching us on the live stream today, just check out the audio drop that we have later or the YouTube video, and the links will be embedded in there, as well as Jackie's IMDb work and some links to some of her videos that are up on YouTube or short films and things like that. So you guys can just get it all in a one-stop shop and kind of see some of the things that Jackie's done that's pretty awesome, or at least we think is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure. And I know you've got many projects in the works too. I believe that I saw some footage, and we talked a little bit with Mondo about the collaborative effort that Mondo and Doug Wicker were doing.
Yeah.
And I think you have a co-starring lead in that project. What can you tell us about that project?
Yeah, it's called Reaper Road. We started shooting it in January, and we're taking a little break, and we'll wrap it up this fall. But it's very two-character centric horror film. Very dramatic at times, but then turns into something supernatural and spooky and fun. And it's been a blast to shoot, and that's totally different from this other film I've been doing, Wake Not the Dead, because Reaper Road is like, it's some pretty heavy, like, heart explosive stuff. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just a gushing of emotions. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of tears. My co-star Joanna Furbachet is a really, really talented actor. She's really experienced in, film and theater, especially theater, but she's an incredible film actor, which you don't always see actors excelling in both.
Sure.
Because they're very different.
Yeah.
And she's one of those rarities that she can really do both really well. She can do those really big stage performances, but then she can reel it in and do a more, subtle and subdued film performance. So yeah, I'm looking forward to wrapping that up. We've got Logan Cole on that one doing effects. And he's been busting his ass, getting everything ready for the fall, and he's been sending me some pictures of what he's been doing. And it's always a treat when Logan's doing effects on your film. I love Logan.
Yeah.
He does great stuff.
So talented. Yeah.
Yeah, creative mind.
Good guy, got a lot of heart.
He's so nice too, right? He just makes all these fucked up monsters, but he's the nicest person.
Yeah. I love soft-spoken and nice.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Nice.
Monsters.
Fantastic. And I really like how he, not everybody has the ability to backward engineer things. So it's you come to Logan with this is the end result that I need, and he thinks about it very practically, but he already knows himself. He can almost tell the director, you're going to have to shoot this part in this way to connect all the pieces together. He already knows these things. So he is a very valuable tool to have on set.
Yeah, he really is. He's really savvy. And it's in the independent film world, it's pretty hard to come across a special effects artist that can also sculpt really well. And he's just an incredible sculptor, and he's really just a jack of all trades.
Yeah. Those are
asset.
Definitely different, areas of concentration that people don't realize, and kind of when you can do both. And speaking of different areas of concentration, I wanted to hammer back in on a comment that you made earlier that maybe some of our members of our audience are watching and don't understand, kind of the difference between maybe a good stage actor versus a good film actor. Could you kind of detail a little bit more as to what you were alluding to, as to what the differences might be in those settings, and kind of what the more appropriate things that they might see characteristically?
Right. When you're acting on a play, you're performing for the back row. And I mean, everyone's seen a play at least once, right? It's just a different style of performing. I feel like theater performances tend to be more larger than life, and film performances, you're performing for the camera, which sometimes is this far from your face,
Right.
So you have to really embrace subtlety when you're performing for film, where performing in a theater is very much the opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't get the luxury of subtlety. Sometimes.
Right. And I mean, some people prefer that. I prefer performing for a camera. I think I'm much better at performing for a camera. But yeah, I mean, they're just completely different animals,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I my hat's off to people that can do the theater stuff, because it is its own animal. And I think the good thing about it, of course, is kind of the instant gratification that you can get. A crowd will tell you in most instances if you're doing good. I think you kind of know the difference between a good clap and a great clap, or a cheer, or whatever the case is, right? Especially if you've performed at any level, you've kind of heard them all. And when it's good, it's kind of electric. It kind of feeds you. You kind of live and breathe off of that. Honestly, it's kind of a adrenaline dump in a way. You really do get that serotonin dump at the same time as well.
For sure. And I missed that because I haven't done a show in several years now, and I do miss that from time to time because it is a huge rush of adrenaline. But the thing is, film is forever. And I love that about it. I love, because you work so hard and you work for so long and such long hours to piece this together, and there's so many people that come together to make it happen. And that's the thing that I always found to be really depressing about working in the theater was you rehearse for months, and then I've never done a large scale theater production, so it's you perform for 2 or 3 weekends, and then it's just over, and you don't have the physical media to prove that you made something, And we're big physical media people in this house.
Sure, absolutely.
I know it's dying, but
right.
horror fans seem to be keeping physical media alive. So
yeah,
God bless horror fans.
That's something we try to promote. We've got our own division on our podcast just totally dedicated to that, and that's our Waxing On piece that a friend of our, Ridge, and his brother Jake do. And they promote essentially just what albums they've been buying recently, and that kind of leads to discussions about other bands, live performances, live shows that they've been to, that sort of stuff. But just kind of promote artists and just kind of the neat things that you find on physical media. I mean, yes, you can go on the internet and find these things out, but I know, like, I kind of detailed, and I do some episodes with them sometimes, and I can relate this to film also in a moment, but sometimes whenever you see something digitally, it doesn't translate to the same if you have that in person. You get, because of the ease of access, I think we all get a little dismissive,
right,
and distracted as well.
Right.
But like I used the example, it was a rap album, a J. Cole album, KOD. It had all these disclaimers on it that I never noticed before, real small, and some of the artwork inside of it as well. I didn't really notice that it looked like kids doing all these drugs, basically. Is what it was.
And you would have never noticed that,
right,
because it's so small on my phone.
Physical media,
right?
I bought the record, and I saw it, and then I saw the disclaimer, and I finally understood the reason for the disclaimer, and I was like, "Why did I not?"
That's awesome.
Catch on to this before, right? I mean, it seems something so simple, but things like that. We kind of go through discovery on that show,
right?
Read things like the thanks section on albums. Like, that was a big thing I used to read when I was a kid, because I go buy a tape or a CD as it converted over to CDs a little bit more commonly. One of the first things I do is go look at the thanks section, because, oh my God,
so-and-so helped produce this.
It's a silly example, but it's like, oh, 311's friends with Bush. They thank Bush on this album, or whatever, I'm like 10. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's so cool, because I like both of those bands. Right, yeah. right. That type of shit. But
I think I also said on that same episode, like, sometimes you have a sentimental or an emotional connection to some pieces of media, and to physically have that
definitely is,
what I mean? It's more meaningful. It makes it even more meaningful, in my opinion.
I kind of look at my physical media collection too, specifically films, because it's been a huge icebreaker for me. If, like, we're having a party over here and sometimes I don't know, like, my wife's friend's husband or, distant relative of hers or whatever the case is, though I often see them wandering toward my shelves.
Oh yeah.
And looking my things over.
It's a conversation piece.
Oh my God, you like this movie, or, and then it just kicks things up. Like, even if I never watch that movie again and it's on my shelf, like, to me, that purchase right there is worth it for that.
Right.
Right. That's the way I see it.
Especially, I think with streaming really taking over.
Definitely.
For movies, it's like, those movies aren't going to be on your streaming platforms forever. They're on there for maybe 3-4 months, and then you're like, shit, where can I want to watch that now, and where can I watch it? You can rip a torrent off the internet, but you shouldn't do that. Also, it's going to look like shit, Yeah. If you've got the physical media, it's going to look awesome.
Right.
And you have it forever.
Right. It's yours. It's physical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand too. Again, rabbit hole on the internet. Somehow I got involved in a video about how the people don't realize this, but even though you go to Netflix or Prime or Hulu or whatever your streaming service is, and you see UHD and you think, okay, I'm going to get a 4K quality plus, stream here, and you got good internet and all that stuff. There's little subtleties in the quality from scene to scene that actually get diluted, and at a rate on the best day, on the best hour of the best performance of your internet and your TV and that streaming service, more times than not even 50% of the time, are they hitting the same quality as the physical UHD Blu-ray that you have on the shelf.
Absolutely not.
And it's hard. Like, to me, like, I think some untrained naked eyes might not be able to catch on that. But I notice a fluidity and things of that ilk. Like, I saw, we have, the whole Alien anthology, box set, right? My son wanted to watch Alien, and me and his mom were like, okay, It's fine. He's 6, but I don't think he'll be too traumatized by it.
No, he won't be too traumatized.
Yeah, it might be a little bit. We'll watch him. We started with Aliens. I should preface it with that. So it's a little bit more action packed.
That's fair.
So we're like, okay, this is a little bit more acceptable. If he's okay, if he responds well to this, he can watch the other ones or whatever, right?
Dude, I love people that show their 6-year-old aliens. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we put it on, and he's having a good time with it. He can't stay up late. He ends up folding. So I mean, it's one of our all-time favorite movies and franchises. So even the bad ones we enjoy. Mm-hmm. So we end up sitting there watching it, and I'm just like, there's something a little bit off about this. So the next day, he was like, "Oh, I didn't finish it," and I was like, "Oh, let's pop in the Blu-ray instead this time." And I did, and I'll be damned if I didn't know. And this is shortly again after I got on one of these rabbit holes. Right away, I noticed the fluidity from scene to scene and that sort of stuff.
I've noticed
drop off or tail. It's I honestly, that is the most
lighting. Yeah,
noticeable thing I think is kind of how your TV even responds with like backlighting and things like that. Yeah, is the lighting of the overall scene from scene to scene.
Agreed.
Yeah, in the background. But Jackie, I know that like in your acting career too, I'm sure that it's been nice accessibility wise to have some of your work on streaming platforms, so people have been able to have access and awareness to your work too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, I mean, the people that are really into underground horror tend to be physical media fans. That there is a connection there, oddly. So we do get a lot of people buying Blu-rays of our stuff, but you know, for the people that are just getting introduced to the kind of stuff we do, it's nice to have that stuff on streaming, because a lot of people, they just do not have the capacity to watch physical media anymore. They got rid of their Blu-ray players, you know, they got rid of all of that. And you can't blame them, you know, it is what it is.
Sure.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely helpful to have the stuff streaming.
Age of convenience.
Yeah, I know. Instant gratification all the time.
Right. I kind of feel like a bad parent because I let my kids watch YouTube and they get so fixated, like they don't realize that there's a world that things weren't on demand and instant, and they almost.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's almost like
it's hard to fathom that, right?
I know it's again extreme example. Here I am, but it's like. It's almost like they're like little drug addicts and they're not, you know, getting their fix for the day whenever they can't just watch what they want without commercials immediately.
Right.
Stupid
ads. I have to skip these ads.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Tell me about 11, 15-minute commercials in between 15-minute segment TV shows.
Honestly, though, sometimes I find myself doing that too, though. It's like I just turned 30 years old. It's like I didn't always have access to instant technology. We had dial-up internet, and every once in a while the internet, it takes like 15 seconds to load the page, and I'm like, oh, stupid piece of shit, you know,
so
and
slow.
it's like, what is wrong with me? Like, it's embarrassing, right? Shouldn't even be saying this.
For too many years. For too many years, I lived in the world of 56K modem.
Oh yeah,
and we lived in remote areas where you could not get even DSL until I was like almost a teenager, which was unreal. We had one friend that had DSL, and like we would all flock to his house and just like torrent the shit out of things because we were teenagers. Had no disposable income.
Yeah, we all did that shit.
Right.
LimeWire.
Crash the shit out of our friends' computers or our computers with that shit. Yeah.
Viruses and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lovely times. Jackie, I also wanted to kind of ask you about in your acting experiences as well. Is there any kind of, I know you kind of mentioned some of the mentors and things and some of the relationships that you've developed out with, but I'm sure that there was kind of springboard opportunities with like one project to another as well, in the sense that, you know, you had an experience on this film, which led to these experiences on these films, even if it's not necessarily the same director or whatever the case is. Can you kind of talk about the importance of those type of opportunities, those social connections, those networking skills?
That's my entire career. So just to give a small example, my first feature film was a film called In Memory Of that we made here in St. Louis. We shot we based it in St. Louis, but it's kind of a road trip film, so we traveled around too. But Anyway, our assistant director for a brief period of that film was Jeff Wedding, who Eric was friends with just through the internet. And Eric used to be a film reviewer, and he had reviewed some of Jeff Wedding's films. And so when we were making In Memory Of, he contacted Jeff, like, hey, do you want to come help out and assist and direct this for a long weekend? Jeff came out to AD the film. Then Jeff's next film was Tennessee Gothic. And he snagged me from In Memory Of to work on Tennessee Gothic. And then I got really close with this crew in Nashville, Tennessee. So then this film that I did in Alaska, I was brought on to that through the connections I had made in Nashville. And that's like my entire career is just people meeting me on film sets and bringing me onto new ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I feel like a lot of people ask that all the time. Like, do you have to audition constantly? And I'm just like, I mean, I do. Like, I audition a lot, sure. And like I get rejected a lot. Right. Most of the films that I get brought on, it's because I'm friends or acquaintances in some way with someone who's working on something that I've worked sure. with on one or multiple things. And that really is the only way I've been able to somehow make a career out of this is through knowing people. Yeah.
You hear the statement, it's about who you know often in right. various professions, but I know that acting has a lot of that. But I mean, obviously this whole linchpin of situations wouldn't have happened if I feel if it wasn't for your talent and your hard work, for sure. Absolutely. And if you weren't working hard on set or doing a good job, I don't think these people would bring you onto the next project either.
The main reason that I want to bring people onto films is not because I think they're like exceptionally talented. It's like they're not a dick.
Sure.
And like, yeah, and especially the longer I do this, I'm like, the next film that we do, I'm like, I just want to get all of our friends on. I mean, all of our friends work in film, so they're all like sure. super capable and talented, right? But it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It who you're working with really makes a difference between like a mediocre to bad film set and an incredible film set. And
sure.
Yeah, I think like the number one rule to like booking work, and I can only speak for the indie scene because that's the level that I work at. But the number one rule is just like be easy to work with, be fun. Don't take yourself so damn seriously and work
right. Absolutely.
Life's too short for that shit.
Yeah, man. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to come to a level of, and again, I can relate it to everything across the arts, certainly playing music, a level of humility. People are going to make mistakes and not always give you their best performance, but I think it's really important to foster a nurturing environment, especially in those situations.
Right.
Where, not to beat people down. I mean, don't get me wrong, different people have different ways of being motivated and require, you can't take the same paintbrush and paint everybody with it, right?
Right.
So there are people that need, I don't know, I guess some confrontation sometimes to kind of kick things up to the next level. But there are others, and I think more times than not, I always kind of use the analogy. My wife and I, we were beekeepers for a period of time until we unfortunately lost our bees to a crazy weather event. But I like to use this analogy because it's an easy one, but it's, you attract, how you want to repel the bees is with smoke. You attract them with sugar water. Mm-hmm. And, you want to be sweet on them, right? So if you want to attract people to you and your environment that you're trying to breed, you need to be sweet on them. You don't want to blow a bunch of smoke.
Right.
And I feel like that's, really a statement, an analogy that you can use anywhere in life.
I don't know. Every time I blow smoke, they come running. So
I'm sure that's a different kind of smoke. It's not the Canadian wildfires we're talking about right now, folks. It's little green kind. But Jackie, I know that you might have some other projects in the work just outside of the two that we talked about. Wake Not the Dead, and then the project with Mondo Franco and Douglas Wicker. Is there any other projects that you can talk about that you kind of have in the works or coming out soon?
Nothing. Everything in development. I can't really speak too much on it.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I should have a feature film coming out hopefully this year. I'm not really sure. Once I don't know. I feel like I always do these movies and I just act in most of them, and as soon as we wrap, everyone's like, so when's that coming out? When's it coming out? When's it coming out? I'm like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Production,
right? Right. Like, I just acted in it, and I've been done for like 2 years, bro. I don't know. But that should be out. I'm hoping this year. It's called Oscar Tango Hell Water, and it's a feature-length film. It's a modern retelling of Shakespeare's Othello.
Oh, okay.
So it's artsy fartsy, but it's got horror elements. It was a really fun shoot. Yeah, it's a really evocative title. But I had a lot of fun on that shoot, and I'm really hoping that comes out this year. We shot that like 2 years ago. So yeah, that's the main one I've got that I'm looking forward to coming up.
Very cool. That mentioning of Shakespeare and horror elements immediately made me think of the recent Macbeth with Denzel Washington.
Oh yeah,
did you get a chance to
never did watch that.
I didn't watch it.
I was actually, it's the Coen brothers now. One of them's retired. I can't remember which one's continuing on. I sound like a bad fan that I can't remember. I guess it's whichever one's married to Frances McDormand because she stars in the film as well. But man, her Lady Macbeth performance and Denzel Washington, I was shocked. I really wasn't. I hate to say this. I knew it was like a good cast of characters and everybody involved were people I was fans of, but I wasn't like, I got to see that. It was like an Apple TV release too, so that made it kind of difficult because I didn't have Apple TV without going, undesirable means to see it. But man, they did the horror elements of that with the witches, and that I was shocked. I was like, I need to see a Coen Brothers movie in a horror genre now because they did that so well. I felt like it had shades of Bjork's performance in The Northman. I felt like.
Oh yeah.
I still haven't seen The Northman.
Oh man, that's excellent too. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear Shakespearean modern retellings with kind of horror elements. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's Shakespearean tragedies. That's a whole thing in storytelling. Right. But to be more of a literal adaptation with a modern day spin and horror elements, I'm very intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Othello is already like pretty ripe with, that dark kind of energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've only seen like a rough cut of it without any sound design or score, so I can't really speak for it too much. It'll be like seeing it for the first time because sound design and score just really changes.
Absolutely,
it changes a movie so much, but it's shot beautifully. Awesome. The DP on that is the same DP as Wake Not the Dead.
Okay.
And he is David Pitt. He's a fantastic director of photography.
Is that how you became involved with the project? Was through the DP, or was there some other characters?
You're talking on Wake Not the Dead?
Yeah, from Wake Not the Dead to...
Yeah, I met the DP on that film, and the director, he was the assistant camera person on that film, too. So I met them both working on that movie.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, I'm really excited to check those out for myself.
Absolutely.
I know. It sounds very awesome. You've been so generous with your time, Jackie, and just wanted to ask you a few kind of personal questions so people kind of got to know you a little bit better before we wrapped up the call today, if you're down to indulge us.
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. I know we kind of already hit on some musical things, but if you were stranded on a desert island, what would be some albums for you? Let's say 4 or 5, if you could name that you just absolutely have to take, if it's all that you could have.
Okay. Violator by Depeche Mode.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
That Minor Threat album that has like 26 songs on it.
Yeah.
I think it's just called Minor Threat. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a collection of EPs. Yeah.
Static Age by Misfits.
Very cool.
Either Or by Elliott Smith.
Okay.
And
honestly, I'm pretty impressed that you didn't belabor over those first 4. You popped them off pretty quick. By the Smiths. Okay. There you go.
There you go. Boom.
Very nice. I like the mixture of genres, punk, post-punk in there.
Yeah.
A little bit of early emo stuff.
Everything.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that early emo stuff. I was really into that when I was in high school.
Me too. Dashboard and like...
I consider really that kind of middle.
Captain Jazz. Do you guys ever listen to Captain Jazz?
Captain Jazz, absolutely.
I was a huge Captain Jazz.
I'm a big Promise Ring fan. There's a lot of members from Captain Jazz and Promise Ring.
Promise Ring's sick.
Braid is an all-time favorite. I've seen them live. Cool. I'd like to see Sunny Day Real Estate. I've missed them the last 2 times in Missouri. I feel like a terrible fan. But they have as good of a 3-album run as any band, in my opinion. Diaries, one of my all-time favorite albums.
Okay.
But yeah, I love that 90s era emo. There's very few things better. American football's great.
All that sad boy shit.
Yeah, sad boy shit. That's right.
I'm into it.
Yeah, absolutely. If the world was ending, what would you say would be the catalyst for its demise?
Groupthink.
I would agree with that 100%. Because that could tie to so many different things.
Right.
Yeah.
A person could say social media. Well, what's the problem with social media? It's kind of groupthink. People getting caught in these echo chambers. People could say a political movement. What's the problem with that? Groupthink. Right? Mm-hmm. So, I think that kind of paints on all those canvases.
I think humans are remarkably intelligent beings on their own. And they get remarkably stupider when they have an echo chamber.
Yeah, 100%
and I'm not saying that I'm like exempt from that. I think we've all fallen into that trap where our beliefs are influenced by people. I don't think I'm smarter than the rest of society, but I find it frightening when I do find myself believing things based off of opinions of people surrounding me. It's a scary phenomenon.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. It's something that I feel like, I don't know, like it seems kind of oxymoronic, or I guess that's maybe not the wrong term. It's almost like we have a podcast, right? So we're talking to people and we're hoping people want to hear what we talk about. But at the same time, I'm just like, God damn it, that groupthink, Yep. So, it's we're always trying to provoke thought, at least on some level. But back to our fun questions. How about we're in a post-apocalyptic landscape? Let's say you have the necessities, food, water, shelter. What is the one thing that you have to survive beyond that?
My dog.
Awesome.
That's a good answer. I love my pups too.
What kind of breed is it?
He's a mutt. I don't know. He's just like an all-American hound,
Yeah, he's
just a ratty boy.
I got one of those.
I have all German dogs, and they're pains in the ass.
Yeah. I mean, Herbert's a pain in the ass too, but he's, we got him like almost 3 years ago, and I grew up with dogs, but he has like changed my life for the better so much. He's just my best friend, and I can't imagine my life without him. So yeah, he's the one thing I couldn't leave.
Very cool. Was he a rescue dog? If you don't mind me asking? Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I always love those opportunities whenever you get a chance, adopt and not buy. But I understand that some people sometimes have particular pet allergies and they have to have certain breeds and things like that. So there's always exceptions, right?
Dogs, yeah.
Right,
sure.
Right. 100%.
I luckily don't have dog allergies, so.
Yeah, I don't either. I have 2 German Shepherds and a Dachshund, so it's
you got some big. Oh, so you got big ones and a little guy.
Yeah, I got a little
one extreme to the other.
I want a dachshund so bad. I think Herbert might have some dachshund in him because he's a long boy and he's kind of got that snout. But
Zeus is was supposed to be a miniature, but he's pushing 30 pounds, so there's
wow.
He's like 20 something pounds, so he's big for a miniature.
He's a hefty boy.
Yeah,
for sure.
My sausage dog.
I love it.
What would be your, we'll say, Mount Rushmore of actresses? Who are some of your favorite actresses?
Well, again, I'm gonna throw Isabel Adjani in there. Sissy Spacek.
Nice.
Shelley Duvall.
Yes.
Marilyn Burns from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
And did I say Naomi Watts?
No, you did not.
Naomi Watts.
Yes.
I like her in that David Lynch shit.
Mulholland Drive. Yeah, she is fantastic. That's one of the best performances on screen.
I agree.
Of any actor.
Completely.
Yeah. Crazy complex character. So much subtlety. Mm-hmm. Great movie. That movie really
it's my favorite Lynch
changed
film.
me.
Yep.
Yeah, it might be mine too. I've had my modes. Lost Highway was my favorite for a while.
That's great too.
I love the weirdness and the soundtrack and the noir aspects of it, and
right.
It's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of his films have that noir aspect too. Where
Definitely,
it's just like this really weird blend of film noir and hyper surrealism.
And I think
no one does it like Lynch,
Yeah, and I think Twin Peaks is one of the all-time greatest things ever created on screen.
Oh my god, yeah, like
it's just got so much for everybody.
It's my comfort show for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've probably watched Twin Peaks like 3 or 4 times all the way through. I love it.
Yeah, I'm due for another rewatch through, and I feel like a terrible David Lynch and Twin Peaks fan because I still yet have not watched the newest seasons.
Oh my god!
Of it, yeah, I still need to watch that.
That's
I actually
crazy.
Intentionally did a Showtime trial so I could watch them all, and I never got around to it. Life's kind of crazy.
Did one of the 30-day things and then couldn't do it. Yeah.
I
still prefer the original series, but like The Return is great in its own right, and it's basically. I mean, how many episodes is it? Like 12? I can't remember, but
I know it's at least in the double digits. I'm pretty confident. Yeah.
David Lynch shocked. Basically just made like a 12-hour experimental film. It's cool.
That's
it's
that's kind of a lot of what I've heard from people that have seen it. Yeah, man. The guy doesn't make anything bad as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, even his. I guess what people would perceive as kind of his lesser than films I enjoy tremendously.
Dude, I'll still fuck with Dune. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh, Dune's excellent. I don't give a shit what anybody says too. Yeah, man. Actually, we just rewatched that right before Denis Villeneuve's Dune came out.
I didn't see his.
I watched them essentially back to back. I think it was like within 2 or 3 days from each other. And just going to go ahead and throw it out there. I think I prefer the David Lynch one.
Do you really?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's Denny's good. He's not a bad director. He doesn't make a bad film either. But I don't know if it's just nostalgia or just what I'm tied to. But Kyle MacLachlan, or I forget what his last name is. He's like a great actor. He's been in several David Lynch projects. So he was in Twin Peaks, and he was in Blue Velvet has to be up there for me too.
Yeah,
Blue Velvet. I was in a melodic hardcore band, and we literally wrote songs about Blue Velvet. And used lyrics. We had a song called Frank Booth. It was about Frank Booth.
I love that.
So it just a big David. Well, here we're talking about Twin Peaks, and I got Laura Palmer on the shirt right now.
Cool.
So, but yeah,
I didn't even notice that. That's great.
Yeah, big David Lynch fan without question. Can't go wrong there.
Hell yeah.
What would you? I'll try and make this a little bit easier. What are 5 comfort films for you? What are some films that you revisit routinely?
Comfort films?
Yeah.
I think I'm weird. My favorite film of all time is Gummo.
I love Gummo.
That's the movie that made me want to make movies. It's a weird film to say is my comfort film because it's really
I love Harmony Korine. I love everything he does.
He's honest, other than like David Lynch, like he's my hero.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say Gummo. I don't know if you're familiar with a film called Necromantic. It's a German film.
Yes.
That's definitely one of my favorites. I would put Mulholland Drive up there for sure. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Excellent.
And I'm going to throw out something completely different. 16 Candles.
Okay. Yeah, there's something wrong with that.
The ultimate comfort movie for me. I've probably seen it like 30 times.
I would put Breakfast Club in that same discussion for me. So yeah, big John Hughes fan.
Yeah.
And you can't go wrong with the Breakfast Club. I think it's many iconic performances. I think it captures that age for people, those characters that they're depicting perfectly.
For sure.
Teen angst, everything's written perfectly. That whole will they, won't they, and that kind of that anxiety that you get early in relationships and meeting new people and being attracted to people, and that, kind of this, you're budding as a person, it just captures everything so perfectly. It is the perfect teen movie.
No one did the high school movie like John Hughes.
Yeah, without question. Fucking great guy. Well, Jackie, I appreciate your time today without question.
It's my pleasure.
As we mentioned earlier in the call, we're going to be linking up your work for ease of access to folks and reference.
Yeah, and we're going to tag the shit out of you.
Yeah, and we're really going to enjoy exposing your work to other people and looking forward to the feedback that we might get as well. And
thank you so much, guys.
Extremely excited to see about what you have in the works in the future, too.
I am, too. Can't wait to get everything out there.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.
This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.